Before dawn, a nanny crosses the city to ensure her daughter's livelihood and dreams. In an office, she meets a lonely boy and an absent father, trapped in their own routines. The unexpected care between them creates bonds that even blood cannot explain. And when fear knocks on the door, they discover that love is presence, and that family is who chooses to stay. The alarm clock rang at 4:30 a.m. in the small apartment in Eastwood Borough, on the outskirts of New York City. Rosalie Collins, 38, quickly turned it off so as not to wake Tiana, her 17-year-old daughter, who was sleeping on the other side of the cramped room. She got up carefully, stepping on the floorboards that didn't creak. She knew every inch of that small 345-square-foot space they called home. In the improvised kitchen, Rosalie put water on to boil. The coffee packet was almost empty, and she mentally calculated how much would be left for the rest of the week. The rent had increased, the electricity bill was overdue, and Tiana's school supplies had consumed a considerable portion of her last paycheck. But complaining was not an option for Rosalie. It never was. As she drank the weak coffee, she watched the rain through the fogged window. The forecast was for a storm all day, which would make her journey to the city centre even more complicated. She prepared a sandwich with day-old bread from the bakery and left it on the table for Tiana, along with a loving note. "Study hard. I'll be thinking of you all day. I love you, Mum." Before leaving, Rosalie carefully opened her daughter's backpack. Among the worn notebooks and borrowed books from the community library, she found a Columbia University brochure with information about the medical school entrance exam. She smiled with teary eyes. She knew Tiana spent nights studying, sacrificing hours of sleep for a dream that seemed impossible given their reality. But her daughter had something she also possessed: determination. At 5:15 a.m., Rosalie left to face the rain. The first bus, crowded with sleepy commuters like herself, would take 50 minutes to the terminal. From there, she would take the subway and then another bus to the Upper East Side, the affluent neighborhood where she would work that day. Rosalie was a freelance nanny, hired by a specialized agency to assist families who needed temporary childcare. Her experience and discretion made her sought after, especially by executives who needed to bring their children to work on emergency days. During the commute, Rosalie tried not to think about the knee pain that worsened with each passing day. She focused on mental calculations: how much she would earn that day, how much she would need to buy the blood pressure medication that had run out, how much was left for Tiana's medical school prep course. An affordable prep course had offered her daughter a partial scholarship, but even the 30% they needed to pay seemed like an insurmountable mountain. At the last station, the rain intensified. Rosalie ran as fast as she could to the bus stop, but couldn't avoid getting wet. She arrived at the huge corporate building on Park Avenue at 7:40 a.m., 20 minutes earlier than agreed. As she discreetly dried her curly hair in the ground floor restroom, she repeated to herself, "One day all this will pass. One day my daughter will be a doctor." On the 28th floor, Gus Miller, 42, CFO of a multinational corporation, tried to calm Lucas, his 8-year-old son, while taking an important call from Asia. "Dad, I don't want to stay here all day," the boy complained, drawing distractedly on a tablet. Gus covered the microphone and whispered, "Just a little longer, champ. The nanny is almost here to stay with you in the playroom." Gus's divorce had been finalized only 6 months ago, after 3 years of constant arguments with Patricia, his ex-wife. Shared custody worked relatively well, but Patricia had traveled to New York City for work and extended her trip to spend a few days with her new boyfriend, leaving Lucas under his father's responsibility outside of their agreement. With school on break, Gus had no alternative but to bring his son to the office. When Rosalie entered the room, she found a tired-looking executive and a boy staring at the ceiling, bored. The floor's recreational space had been adapted for children who occasionally needed to accompany their parents. It had some toys, books, and a small table. "Good morning, I'm Rosalie from the Care Connect agency. I'm here to look after Lucas today," she introduced herself with a discreet smile. Gus barely looked up from his papers. "Great, I have meetings all day. He's already had lunch, but he might need a snack in the afternoon. I'll be in the conference room, extension 2815. Rosalie nodded, already accustomed to hurried parents. She approached Lucas, who was watching her with curiosity. "Hi, Lucas, what are you drawing there?" The boy hesitated, but then turned the tablet to show her. It's a castle, with a prince who lives alone. Alone? Every prince needs friends, don't you think? He has a dragon friend, Lucas explained, pointing to a red smudge in the corner of the screen. Dragons don't abandon people. Rosalie caught the message between the lines. She sat beside him and asked about his favorite stories, his preferred games, what he liked to eat. Gradually, Lucas began to open up. During the morning, Rosalie realized that, despite the expensive toys and available technology, the boy carried an emotional void that she knew well. As they colored together, Lucas asked about her life. "Do you have children?" "Yes, a daughter. Tiana, she's 17. Does she stay alone when you work?" "She goes to school and then studies at the library." "She wants to be a doctor." Lucas's eyes lit up. "A real doctor? Who takes care of people?" "Yes. She dreams of taking care of people who don't have money to pay for expensive doctors." "My dad pays for expensive doctors for me," Lucas commented simply, "but he can never go with me. He always sends the driver or the secretary." At that moment, Gus appeared at the door to check on them. He was surprised to see Lucas laughing, as Rosalie taught him a clapping game she had learned in childhood. It had been a long time since he had seen his son so at ease with someone. "How are things?" he asked, trying to disguise his usual brusqueness. "We're great, sir. Lucas is a very intelligent and creative boy. Dad, Rosalie told me her daughter wants to be a doctor, and that they study together at night because Rosalie studies too. She's finishing high school, you know." Gus looked more closely at the simple woman in front of him. It wasn't common for a temporary nanny to form such a quick connection with Lucas, who usually seemed reserved with strangers. "I didn't know," he replied, genuinely interested. "Are you too hungry? I can order something for you." "I brought my packed lunch, sir, but thank you." "Dad, can we all have lunch together?" Lucas asked, surprising both Rosalie and Gus. The executive checked his watch. He had a video conference in 40 minutes, but something in his son's hopeful gaze made him hesitate. "Maybe another day, champ. My schedule is full today." Lucas's smile disappeared, and he returned to concentrating on his drawing. Rosalie noticed the immediate change, and for a brief moment her eyes met Gus's with an expression that said, "He just wants your attention." Gus felt a discomfort he couldn't name. He returned to his office thinking about the nanny and her daughter, who dreamed of medicine, about the nights of study after hard days of work. He thought about Lucas, alone with his drawings of princes in empty castles, and about Patricia, who had extended her trip for 2 more weeks. When the phone rang again, Gus made an impulsive decision that would change the course of many lives. He needed to talk to Rosalie. Perhaps she could help him in a way that went far beyond just looking after Lucas for a day. At 5 in the afternoon, when the rain finally let up, Gus returned to the playroom. He found Lucas and Rosalie sitting on the floor, surrounded by sheets of paper, where they were drawing what appeared to be a comic book. The boy gesticulated animatedly, explaining every detail of his creation. "And then the dragon isn't bad. He just protects the castle because everyone thinks the prince is weak. But actually he's very brave." Rosalie listened attentively, asking questions that stimulated the boy's imagination. Gus remained silent for a few moments, observing the scene. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen Lucas so excited. "It looks like you had fun," he commented, finally announcing his presence. Lucas ran to his father, holding one of the drawings. "Look, Dad, we made a story. Rosalie said that comic books are literature too, you know." "I didn't know that," Gus replied, genuinely surprised. "That's really cool, son." Rosalie began to organize the papers, preparing to end the day. Gus cleared his throat, somewhat uncomfortable with what he was about to propose. "Ms. Rosalie, can we talk for a minute?" She followed him to a corner of the room, while Lucas continued to perfect his drawing. "I have a somewhat unusual request," Gus began. "As you may know, we're on school break, and Lucas's mother has extended her trip for 2 more weeks. I've noticed that you and my son, well, you get along very well." Rosalie nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I'd like to know if you could look after him during these 2 weeks. Not as an occasional day nanny through the agency, but as a constant presence. I can pay very well." The proposal caught Rosalie by surprise. On one hand, it would mean a considerable extra income. On the other, it would compromise her other jobs and her routine with Tiana. "Mr. Miller, I appreciate the trust, but I need to consider a few factors. I have other clients and, most importantly, my daughter. Please call me Gus, he interrupted. And I understand your concerns. What do you think about including your daughter in the arrangement? On days when she's not at school, she could come too. I have enough space. Lucas, who apparently was listening to the conversation, approached, excitedly. Yes, Tiana can come. She'll like my drawings, won't she, Rosalie? The nanny smiled at the boy's enthusiasm, but still hesitated. She knew well the limits between work and personal involvement. I have one condition, she said finally, surprising herself with her boldness. You need to participate more in Lucas's routine. I cannot replace a father's presence. Gus recoiled slightly, not expecting such frankness. He was accustomed to delegating and compensating for his absence with gifts and privileges. How so exactly? Lunches together, time for games before bed, late afternoons without the phone. Lucas doesn't just need supervision, he needs connection. A tense silence settled between them. Lucas looked from one to the other, sensing the importance of that moment without fully understanding it. I accept, Gus replied, extending his hand. Can we start tomorrow? On the bus ride home, Rosalie tried to process what had just happened. The salary offered by Gus was 3 times her current monthly income. With that money, she could pay for Tiana's prep course in full and still save a little. But she had entered unknown territory. She had set conditions for a powerful man and committed to helping him reconnect with his son. She arrived home at 8 in the evening, finding Tiana bent over her books, her curly hair tied in an improvised bun with a pencil. Mom, you won't believe it! Professor Deborah got another spot in the affordable prep course. If I start attending now, I still have time to prepare for the mid-year entrance exam. Rosalie hugged her daughter, emotional. Tiana, I also have news. I think we can pay for your prep course in full. As she explained Gus's proposal, she watched her daughter's expressions change from surprise to distrust, and finally to enthusiasm. So I'm going to meet this boy and his dad? And I can study there when I'm not at the prep course. Yes, but remember, I'm going as a professional, not as a family friend or anything like that. Tiana smiled. You always say that, Mom, but you end up caring about all the children you look after. This time it's different, Rosalie insisted. This man, Gus, he needs to learn how to be a father. And the boy, Lucas, there's a lot of emotional need there. The next morning at 7:30 a.m., Rosalie and Tiana waited in the lobby of the luxurious building where Gus lived, in Tribeca. The doorman scrutinized them from head to toe before allowing them entry, but not before confirming with apartment 1401 via intercom. The private elevator opened directly into the duplex penthouse. Lucas ran to greet them, still in his pajamas, while Gus appeared right behind, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, speaking rapidly on the phone. Welcome, he said, covering the microphone. Lucas, show them around the house while I finish this call. The guest room is ready, Rosalie, in case you need to use it. And so the journey began. The first hours were marked by a mutual understanding of spaces and boundaries. Tiana, initially shy, was soon charmed by Gus's private library and asked permission to explore the book collection. Lucas in turn clung to Rosalie, showing her every corner of the apartment as if presenting an enchanted kingdom. And this is my room. I have lots of toys, but most of them I don't even use. You can choose anyone to take home later. Rosalie noticed the blue walls decorated with planet and astronaut stickers, the bed made probably by the cleaning staff, and the complete absence of family photographs. There was something deeply impersonal about that child's room full of expensive objects. At 9 o'clock, Gus appeared in the kitchen, where Rosalie was preparing breakfast for the children. I need to leave for a meeting. I should be back around 2, he announced, grabbing a folder from the table. I thought we would start with our agreement today, Rosalie replied calmly. Family breakfast was the first item. Gus stopped as if caught in a transgression. Lucas watched him, holding a piece of toast in the air. Are you having breakfast with us, Dad? After a moment of hesitation, Gus put the folder aside and sat at the table. Of course, son. What do we have to eat? During breakfast, Rosalie observed the interactions between father and son. Gus asked about school, but his questions were generic, almost rehearsed. Lucas answered briefly, as if he knew his father's interest was limited. Tiana, sensing the discomfort, began to talk about the comic books Lucas had mentioned. And soon all four were discussing superheroes and villains. "I never thought I'd be talking about Spider-Man at 9 in the morning on a Tuesday," Gus commented, discreetly checking his watch. "Life is made of small moments like this," Rosalie replied. "They're the ones that stay in our memory." After breakfast, as Gus prepared to leave, Lucas asked to show his comic book project to Tiana. The two children, one 8, the other 17, went to the room, leaving the adults alone. "Have you always been like this?" Gus asked, intrigued. "Like what?" "So direct, so sure about what really matters." Rosalie smiled. "When you have little, you learn to value the essentials. Hand quality time is something you can't buy, Mr. Miller." "Gus," he corrected, "and I think I have a lot to learn from you." In the following hours, Rosalie established a small revolution in the house's routine. Tiana helped Lucas with his drawings, explaining concepts of narrative and character development. Rosalie organized forgotten toys and discovered dusty board games at the back of a closet. When Gus returned for lunch, as promised, he found the living room transformed into a space for collective creation. "What's going on here?" he asked, surprised to see poster boards, colored pencils, and magazines scattered across the carpet that normally remained immaculate. "We're creating our own comic book," Lucas explained, beaming. "It's about a very busy man who forgot how to play, but a friendly dragon and a wise fairy help him remember." Tiana blushed slightly but continued drawing. Rosalie watched Gus's reaction carefully. He could get annoyed with the mess, with the obvious reference to his own life, or simply ignore the activity. To her surprise, Gus loosened his tie, took off his jacket, and sat on the floor. "And where do I fit into this story?" he asked, picking up a blue pencil. "You can be the busy man, Dad," Lucas replied with disconcerting honesty. Tiana and Rosalie exchanged glances, trying to suppress their laughter. Gus, in turn, seemed to reflect seriously on the proposal. "You know, I think I really do need the help of a dragon and a fairy to remember how to play," he admitted, beginning to draw alongside his son. That afternoon, something subtle changed in their dynamic. As they created together, the social and economic hierarchies that separated them seemed to momentarily dissolve. They were just four people sharing stories, laughter, and ideas. At the end of the day, as Rosalie and Tiana prepared to go home, Gus surprised them with an invitation. "Tomorrow is Wednesday," he said. "I thought of taking the day off to take Lucas to Central Park. Would you two like to join us?" Lucas jumped for joy at the idea, while Tiana looked at her mother, expectant. "That would be great," Rosalie replied. "But remember, I'm here for work." "Consider it a day of outdoor work, then," Gus retorted with a smile, "with ice cream and everything." On the way back home on the crowded bus, Tiana held tightly to the folder with school supplies that Gus had insisted on giving her. "He's different than I thought he'd be," the teenager commented. "I thought he'd be more snobbish." Rosalie thought the same but remained cautious. "He's trying, Tiana, but remember, our work there is temporary. We can't get too attached." But as she said this, an inner voice questioned her. Was it already too late for such a warning? Central Park glowed under the mild sun of that Wednesday. After days of constant rain, New York City's sky finally opened up into a rare blue, as if to celebrate that unique moment. Gus had parked his BMW near Gate 4, and now the four walked among families and athletes enjoying the good weather. Lucas ran ahead, occasionally stopping to wait for the adults, while Tiana photographed the park's trees and sculptures with her phone. Rosalie observed everything with a contained smile, still uncomfortable with the unusual situation. An outing with her employer and the children, as if they were... "What exactly? You seem worried," Gus commented, walking beside her. "I'm just trying to understand my role here today," she replied frankly. "Am I the nanny? The guest? The park tour guide?" Gus laughed, a sound Rosalie realized was rare. "How about just being yourself? I think that's what Lucas likes most about you." Before she could answer, they were interrupted by Lucas, who had run back. "Dad! There's a popcorn vendor over there. Can we buy some?" "Of course, champ." As Gus and Lucas walked towards the vendor, Tiana approached her mother. "This place is amazing, Mom. Have you ever been here before?" "Once when you were little. I brought you to see the biennial, remember?" Tiana shook her head, indicating she didn't remember. "We could come back more often. It would be perfect for studying outdoors." Rosalie nodded, thinking about how quickly life was changing. A week ago, they could barely pay the bills. Now her daughter was receiving expensive school supplies and planning visits to Central Park to study. When Gus and Lucas returned with popcorn for everyone, they sat on a lawn in the shade of a large tree. It looked like a scene from a picture-perfect family commercial. The perfect family enjoying a day at the park, except for the fact that they weren't a real family. "How did you two meet?" Lucas asked suddenly, looking at Rosalie and Gus. The adults exchanged embarrassed glances. "Rosalie is my employee, Lucas," Gus explained. "She's taking care of you while Mom is traveling." The boy frowned, confused. "But employees don't go out with their bosses. Uncle Robert never goes for ice cream with you, and he's worked for you for years." Tiana stifled a laugh with her hand, while Rosalie tried to formulate an appropriate answer. "There are different kinds of jobs, Lucas," she explained gently. "Mine involves taking care of you, which includes fun times like this. And what about Tiana? Does she also work for Dad?" This time Gus intervened. "Tiana is our guest, and to be honest, I'm loving getting to know both of you. It's refreshing." Something in the way he said it, with disarming sincerity, made Rosalie look away, suddenly aware of a connection forming between them, beyond the professional relationship. The afternoon passed at a leisurely pace. They visited the African American Cultural Museum, where Tiana showed surprising knowledge, impressing Gus. They rented a quadricycle and pedaled around the lake, laughing at their clumsy attempts to synchronize. They bought ice cream and sat by the water's edge, watching the ducks. At one point, Rosalie noticed that Gus had left his cell phone in the car. He wasn't checking emails, making calls, or consulting the stock market. He was totally present, something she suspected was extraordinarily rare. "Your dad is different today," Tiana commented as they walked a little behind Gus and Lucas, who were now trying to fly a kite. "Different how?" "More light-hearted. When we first arrived at his apartment, it seemed like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders." Rosalie watched the executive laughing with his son, helping him launch the kite into the wind. Sometimes people just need permission to be happy. At the end of the afternoon, as the sun began to set, Lucas solemnly declared that it had been the best day of his entire life. The comment, made with the dramatic intensity typical of a child, had a visible impact on Gus. On the way back, they decided to stop by Rosalie and Tiana's house before returning to Gus's apartment. The nanny initially hesitated. Her small apartment on the outskirts was a stark contrast to the luxurious penthouse in Tribeca, but Lucas insisted he wanted to see where they lived. Gus's imported car completely stood out on the narrow streets of Eastwood Borough. Children played ball in the asphalt, ladies chatted on the sidewalks, and loud music came from some windows. It was a completely different world from the one Gus and Lucas lived in. Rosalie's apartment was on the third floor of a building without an elevator. As they climbed the stairs, she couldn't help but notice Gus's expression, not one of disdain as she had feared, but of genuine curiosity. "Welcome to our home," she announced, opening the door. "It's not big, but it's our home." Lucas entered first, looking at everything with fascination. The apartment was small but extremely organized and cozy. There were plants in improvised pots, shelves made of painted crates, and an infinity of notes, photos, and drawings fixed to the refrigerator with colorful magnets. "You have so many photos," Lucas exclaimed, approaching to get a better look. "And notes, too. It's our happiness board," Tiana explained, pointing to a Polaroid where she and her mother smiled in front of a public library. "Every special moment goes there." Gus watched in silence. In his 3,200-square-foot apartment, there were barely any personal objects. The walls were decorated with works of art, selected by an interior designer. Photographs were rare, and the spaces, though luxurious, lacked the soul that overflowed in those few square feet. "Would you like some coffee?" Rosalie offered, feeling strangely comfortable with the unexpected visit. "I just made some cheese bread, my grandma's special recipe." Sitting at the small kitchen table with cups of coffee and a plate of still-warm cheese bread, they talked like old friends. Lucas talked about his swimming lessons. Tiana spoke about her dream of studying medicine. And Gus, surprisingly, shared stories of his childhood in rural New York, where his father owned a small construction supply store. "I helped with deliveries on weekends," he recounted. I knew every street in town, every customer by name. How did you get from there to become, well, who you are today? Tiana asked, curious. I got a scholarship to study business administration at the NYU Stern School of Business. Then an internship at an investment bank, promotions, moves, and I ended up losing connection with that simpler life. Rosalie noticed a note of melancholy in his voice. Do you still have family there? My parents passed away a few years ago. I have a brother in Philadelphia, but we rarely see each other. Dad, Lucas interrupted, can we bring Rosalie and Tiana for dinner at home tomorrow? I want to show Tiana my science book collection. The innocent question brought back the reality they had temporarily forgotten. Rosalie was an employee, hired for a specific service. If they want to, Gus replied, looking at Rosalie as if asking for her approval. Tomorrow I have to study for a test, Tiana said quickly, noticing her mother's discomfort. But my mom will be there, right? Yes, I'll be there early tomorrow, Rosalie confirmed, resuming her professional tone. As they said goodbye at the apartment door, Lucas surprised Rosalie with a tight hug. Thank you for the best day of my life, he whispered, before following his father down the stairs. When the door closed, Tiana faced her mother with a playful smile. What is it? Rosalie asked, taking off her tired shoes. Nothing, the teenager replied, heading to the small bathroom. I just don't think Mr. Miller looks at you like you're just the nanny. Rosalie shook her head, refusing to entertain such thoughts. Don't be silly. We're from different worlds, Tiana. What you saw today was just a break from reality. But that night, as she packed her lunch for the next day, Rosalie found herself recalling the way Gus had looked at her when he tasted her cheese bread, the way he had laughed unreservedly during the bike ride, the attention with which he had listened to Tiana talk about her dreams. There was something there, a connection, a possibility, that both frightened and fascinated her. On the other side of the city, in the silence of his penthouse, Gus looked at the sleeping Lucas. His son clutched a drawing he had made during the day, 4 stick figures smiling under a bright yellow sun. My family, read the childish caption. As he put the drawing in the nightstand drawer, Gus realized that for the first time in years, he didn't feel the loneliness that usually consumed him in that huge, empty apartment. Something had changed, or someone had changed him. The next morning, when the doorbell rang promptly at 8 o'clock, Lucas ran to answer, as if expecting not just Rosalie, but the promise of a new special day. Good morning, the boy exclaimed, opening the door with a big smile. I have a surprise for you. Rosalie entered, curious. On the dining room table, an elaborate breakfast was served. Cut fruits, various breads, cakes, juices, and coffee. In the center, a handmade card read, Thank you for the best day. Lucas woke up at 6 to help prepare everything, Gus explained, appearing in the living room wearing not a suit, as usual, but jeans and a casual shirt. And I took another day off? I thought we could visit your house again. Lucas was fascinated by your neighborhood. Rosalie felt her heart race, torn between the joy of seeing Lucas so happy and the danger of blurring the lines between work and personal involvement even further. Actually, she began, choosing her words carefully, I thought of taking Lucas to visit our neighborhood's community library today. Tiana will be there studying, and there's a comic book workshop that I think he would love. Lucas jumped with excitement, while Gus seemed slightly disappointed not to have been included in the plan. Great idea, he said finally. I have some meetings I can move up then. Shall we meet for dinner? At that moment, Gus's phone rang. The name Patricia flashed on the screen. He hesitated before answering, moving a little away. Hi, Patricia. Yes, he's fine. 2 more weeks. But you said you'd be back on Friday. Rosalie noticed the tension growing in Gus's shoulders. Lucas, in turn, stopped smiling and began to play distractedly with a napkin, pretending not to hear the conversation. I understand. Yes, I managed to arrange everything here. No, you don't need to worry. When he hung up, silence weighed in the room. Lucas looked at the floor, and Rosalie knew exactly what he was feeling. Abandonment, the feeling of not being a priority. Is Mom staying longer in New York? The boy asked, still not looking up. Yes, son, she needed to extend her trip because of work. Lucas nodded, as if he had expected that answer. Then, surprising both adults, he got up and hugged his father around the waist. It's okay, Dad, I have you. And Rosalie. And Tiana, too. Gus swallowed hard, visibly moved by his son's gesture. His eyes met Rosalie's over Lucas's head, communicating a silent plea for help, understanding, and partnership. "How about we all go to the library together?" she suggested, extending an invisible bridge to that man who, despite all his power and wealth, seemed as vulnerable as anyone. "Afterward, we can have lunch there. I know a simple restaurant, but it has the best feijoada in the East Side borough." The smile Lucas gave at that moment, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes, was confirmation that they were on the right track. And as Gus put his phone in his pocket, determined to remain present, Rosalie realized they had crossed an invisible boundary. They were no longer just employee and boss, nanny and client. They were two people trying to rebuild something broken, building bridges across different worlds, united by a single certainty, that love in its multiple forms is the most transformative force there is. The 2 weeks that were supposed to be temporary turned into a month. Patricia had again postponed her return, this time claiming an important project in Chicago that would keep her away for another 15 days. Gus didn't protest, something unthinkable weeks ago. The truth, which he barely admitted to himself, was that his ex-wife's absence had created space for a new dynamic in his life. The routine that had been established was surprisingly harmonious. Rosalie arrived early every morning and prepared breakfast for the three of them. Gus reduced his hours at the office and began working more from home, actively participating in moments with Lucas. Tiana frequently came after her prep course classes, bringing books and stories that enchanted the boy. On that sunny Friday, Gus proposed something special. "How about a picnic at Bear Mountain State Park on Sunday? We could spend the whole day there, do an easy hike, observe birds. What do you think?" "Yes," Lucas exclaimed, jumping on the sofa. "We can bring the kite we bought at the park. The weather forecast predicts good weather," Gus confirmed, looking at Rosalie. "Would you two join us?" Tiana, who was finishing a chemistry exercise at the table, looked up hopefully. Rosalie hesitated. Sundays were traditionally her days off, reserved for household chores and her only truly personal time. "It would be like an outing, not work," Gus added, noticing her hesitation. "I mean, you'd be there as our friend." The word hung in the air, laden with implicit meanings. Were they friends now? What exactly had they become in these weeks of daily cohabitation? "Let's go, Mom," Tiana insisted. "It's been a long time since we've done something like this." "All right," Rosalie agreed, unable to resist the collective enthusiasm. "But let me prepare the food." "You two in the kitchen are still a disaster," Gus laughed, remembering their frustrated attempt to make pancakes the previous Sunday, which had resulted in a kitchen covered in flour and a batter that looked more like concrete. "Deal. I'll take care of transportation and drinks. You take care of the food. And the kids take care of the fun." Sunday arrived with an impeccably blue sky as promised. Gus appeared at Rosalie and Tiana's apartment at 8 in the morning, with Lucas already installed in the back seat of the car, surrounded by picnic gear. "Good morning, ladies," he greeted them with a smile that lit up his eyes. "Ready for adventure?" During the drive to Bear Mountain State Park, Rosalie observed how Gus had changed. The tense and distant man from their first meeting had given way to someone who sang children's songs with his son, who made silly jokes, who seemed genuinely relaxed. His worry lines had softened, and even his posture seemed less rigid. The Bear Mountain State Park welcomed them with its lush Atlantic forest. They chose a moderate trail, suitable for everyone, and walked for approximately an hour until they reached a clearing near a small stream. The spot was perfect. Verdant lawn, leafy trees providing partial shade, and the tranquil sound of running water. They spread 2 colorful blankets on the ground, and Rosalie began to unpack the sandwiches, salads, fruits, and cakes she had prepared. Lucas and Gus went to explore the stream, while Tiana organized the disposable plates and cutlery. "You look like a family," the teenager commented in a low voice, looking towards the father and son who were jumping from stone to stone on the creek bank. "Tiana, please don't start with that again. I'm just saying what I see. Mum, he looks at you the way Dad looked in the old photos." Rosalie felt her face flush. She knew something was changing between her and Gus. The long conversations after Lucas fell asleep, the hands that occasionally touched when passing objects. the gazes that held for a few seconds longer than necessary. "We're from different worlds, daughter. And he's my boss, don't forget that. So what? Wasn't Grandma a domestic worker when she met Grandpa, who owned the bakery?" And back in her day, prejudice was even greater. Before Rosalie could answer, Gus and Lucas returned with the boy proudly displaying some colorful stones he had collected. "Look, Tiana. This one sparkles when wet. It could be an important mineral for science." The teenager examined the stones with the seriousness Lucas expected. Very interesting. We'll need to do some lab tests to confirm your theory." Lunch proceeded in a relaxed and joyful atmosphere. They ate in the shade of the trees, talking about everything and nothing. Lucas told fantastical stories about the forest animals. Tiana spoke about her science fair project in the prep course. Gus shared memories of childhood camping trips, and Rosalie, gradually allowing herself to relax, sang old songs her grandmother had taught her. After the meal, Lucas asked to fly the kite. The location was ideal. The clearing offered enough open space and a constant breeze blew. Perfect for kite flying. "Let's go to that higher part," Gus suggested, pointing to a small hill at the edge of the clearing. While Tiana and Rosalie tidied up the picnic remains, father and son walked away with the colorful kite they had bought weeks before. From where they stood, the women could see Lucas running and laughing, holding the reel as the kite gracefully soared into the sky. "Look, it's flying," the boy shouted, waving enthusiastically. That's when it happened. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. Lucas, excited by the kite's success, didn't notice the exposed tree root in his path. He stumbled, lost his balance, and, trying to hold onto a low branch, ended up falling down a small side embankment they hadn't noticed. The scream of pain was instantaneous and terrifying. Gus was the first to react, scrambling down the embankment in seconds. Rosalie and Tiana ran after him. Lucas was conscious but crying intensely, holding his right leg. Even from a distance, Rosalie could see the abnormal angle it was at. "Don't try to move him," she warned, approaching. Years of caring for children had taught her basic first aid. "Lucas, dear, try to stay as still as possible, okay?" Gus was pale, visibly in shock. "What do we do? We need an ambulance, but we're in the middle of the trail. Dad, it hurts so much." Lucas sobbed. Rosalie quickly assessed the situation. "Tiana, in my bag there's a first aid kit. Please bring it. Gus, we need to stabilize his leg before moving him. It looks like a tibia fracture." Rosalie's calm competence in that critical moment contrasted with Gus's mounting panic. While Tiana ran back to get the kit, Rosalie held Lucas's hand, maintaining eye contact with him. "It's going to be okay, my angel. I know it hurts a lot, but you are strong. We need to keep your leg still until we can get help, understand?" The boy nodded between sobs, squeezing her hand tightly. Gus seemed lost. "How are we going to get him out of here? We're almost an hour from the park entrance." "One of us needs to go get help," Rosalie decided. "Tiana can stay with me and Lucas while you go back to get the park rangers. They should have proper rescue equipment." Tiana returned with the first aid kit. With precise movements, Rosalie cleaned the visible scratches and, with her daughter's help, improvised a leg splint for Lucas using magazines from the kit and scarves. "I'm scared," Lucas murmured. His little face contorted in pain. "I know, dear, but we're here with you." "We won't leave you alone for a second," Rosalie assured him, stroking his sweaty hair. Gus, who was observing the scene with a mixture of admiration and helplessness, finally regained some of his composure. "I'll go get help. I'll be back as fast as possible." Before leaving, he knelt beside his son. "Be strong, champ. Dad promises everything will be okay." Then, to Rosalie's surprise, Gus held her face in his hands and, wordlessly, placed a kiss on her forehead, a gesture of trust and gratitude so sincere that it made her eyes sting. "Take care of them," he simply requested, before running off down the trail. The next 2 hours were the longest of Rosalie's life. She kept Lucas hydrated and conscious, telling stories to distract him from the pain, while Tiana constantly checked the boy's vital signs, applying what she had learned in biology classes. When they finally heard voices approaching, the relief was immense. Gus returned accompanied by 3 park rangers, equipped with a special trail rescue stretcher. "Open tibia fracture," the paramedic reported after a quick assessment. "We'll stabilize it properly and take him to the nearest hospital." The journey back down the trail was tense, with Lucas being carried on the specialized stretcher. Gus followed alongside, holding his son's hand, while Rosalie and Tiana came right behind, carrying the few belongings they managed to collect. At the local hospital nearest to the park, Lucas was immediately sent for examinations. The X-ray confirmed the suspicion, a tibia fracture that would require surgical intervention. There were also some deep cuts that would need stitches. In the waiting room, Gus paced back and forth, alternating between calls to his private doctor and moments of tormented silence. Rosalie and Tiana remained seated, physically and emotionally exhausted. I got authorization to transfer him to New York Presbyterian Hospital as soon as he's stabilized, Gus informed them, finally sitting beside them. My orthopedist is already being notified. Rosalie nodded, trying to ignore the sudden distance she felt. The executive Gus, accustomed to solving problems with power and money, was back. You were incredible out in the park, he continued, surprising her. If it wasn't for you. I just did what anyone would do, she replied, deflecting the compliment. No, Rosalie. You kept calm when I was in a panic. You knew exactly what to do. Lucas trusts you in a way that... He stopped, unable to complete the sentence. Tiana, sensing the intensity of the moment, discreetly got up. I'm going to look for a snack bar. I'm hungry. Does anyone want anything? When they were alone, Gus took Rosalie's hands in his. I've been so consumed by work in recent years that I forgot how to be a father, how to be present, how to truly care. And then you appeared with your simple wisdom, your unconditional love, your strength. Rosalie felt tears forming but resisted. Gus, we're from different worlds. You're my boss and... No, he interrupted her firmly. We're not just boss and employee. Not anymore. These weeks, you and Tiana brought life into our home. You brought meaning. And today, when I saw Lucas hurt, I realized I don't want to go back to the life we had before. Before Rosalie could respond, a doctor appeared at the door. Family of Lucas Miller? Both stood up instantly. I'm his father, Gus said, stepping forward. And I'm... Rosalie hesitated, unsure how to define herself. She's family, Gus completed with conviction. You can speak in front of her. The doctor nodded. Surgery will be necessary, but it's not high risk. We've temporarily stabilized the fracture and stitched the cuts. He's sedated now. The transfer to the requested hospital has been authorized, and the ambulance will arrive in approximately 1 hour. When the doctor left, Gus turned to Rosalie. I want you and Tiana to come to the hospital with us. And then I want you to stay at home with me and Lucas, not as a nanny and her daughter, but as a part of our family. The words hung between them, laden with possibilities. Rosalie felt her heart race, torn between fear and hope. Gus, this is crazy. You're emotional because of the accident. You're not thinking clearly. On the contrary, he countered, holding her hands firmly. For the first time in years, I'm seeing with absolute clarity. When Lucas fell, I wasn't the one who knew what to do. It was you. When he's sad, I'm not the one he seeks out first. It's you. And when I'm lost, adrift, he paused, searching for the right words. It's in your eyes that I find my way back home. Rosalie closed her eyes, trying to organize her thoughts. Part of her wanted to believe in that possibility. A new beginning, a reconfigured family, a love that transcended social barriers. Another part feared she was living a temporary fantasy that would dissolve at the first real difficulty. Let's do this, Gus proposed, reading her hesitation. For now, you two come home to help with Lucas's recovery. He'll need special care, and you're the best person for that. In the meantime, we can let things flow naturally. No pressure, no defined expectations. Just people who care about each other, jointly caring for a child we love. The proposal was sensible, a middle ground that didn't force her to make drastic decisions in the heat of emotion. Rosalie nodded slowly. All right, we'll stay until Lucas recovers, but we'll need to establish some clear rules, especially with Tiana present. Absolutely, Gus agreed, the relief evident in his expression. And I promise your daughter will have all the support to continue studying. The prep course, the books, whatever is necessary. At that moment, Tiana returned with sandwiches and sodas. She looked from one to the other, sensing the charged atmosphere. Did I miss something? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Rosalie exchanged a knowing look with Gus before replying, We have a proposal to discuss with you, daughter, one that could change our lives completely. And as they explained the temporary arrangement, Rosalie realized that for the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving, but considering the possibility of truly living. The fear still existed, doubts persisted, but now there was also something new blossoming in her heart, the hope of a future that, until weeks ago, she would never have imagined possible. Gus's apartment completely transformed in the weeks following the accident. What was once an elegant yet cold space, decorated with millimeter precision by a renowned designer, now showed clear signs of life and human warmth. There were books stacked on the coffee table, Tiana's study materials spread across the office, Lucas's drawings fixed to the refrigerator doors with colorful magnets, and the constant aroma of homemade food filling the rooms. In the guest room, now permanently occupied by Rosalie and Tiana, framed photos brought from their old apartment shared space with fresh flowers that Gus insisted on replenishing weekly. For Lucas, who was recovering after successful surgery, this new family configuration represented the fulfillment of a secret dream. "When can I get the cast off, Mom?" he asked Rosalie one morning, as she changed the bandages protecting his stitches. The mom had slipped out naturally, surprising both of them. Lucas blushed intensely, while Rosalie froze for an instant. "I'm sorry," the boy murmured, embarrassed. "It's just, you take care of me like Pedro's mom takes care of him." Rosalie felt a lump in her throat. "You don't have to apologize, dear. I'm honored that you feel that way about me. But remember that you have a mother who loves you, even if she's far away." Patricia had still not returned from her trip. After hearing about the accident, she had promised to come back immediately, but professional complications kept her in Chicago. Her video calls with Lucas had become more frequent but brief. The boy, though polite, clearly felt more comfortable in the physical presence of Rosalie and Gus. "The doctor said another 3 weeks or so, and you can trade that big cast for an orthopedic boot," Rosalie finally replied, returning to the initial question. "But until then, we need to take good care of those stitches and follow the physical therapy carefully." Lucas nodded solemnly, as if receiving an important mission. His room had been completely reorganized to accommodate the new reality. The bed positioned for easier movement, colorful crutches leaning against the wall, Tiana had decorated them with superhero stickers, and a small adapted table where he could draw and do the lessons a private tutor brought 3 times a week. "Can I go to the living room?" "Tiana promised to help me with the new chapter of our comic book." "Of course you can. Let me just get your crutches." In the hallway, Rosalie found Gus coming out of the office carrying some papers. He wore reading glasses, a detail she had recently discovered and found peculiarly charming. "How is he today?" he asked, taking off his glasses and putting them in his shirt pocket. "Good, the stitches are healing nicely, and he seems less bothered by the cast." Gus smiled, approaching to place a soft kiss on her forehead, a gesture that had become routine between them, a form of affection that respected the boundaries Rosalie had set for this period of adaptation. "And you? How are you?" The question was simple but laden with meaning. Rosalie knew he was referring not only to the physical fatigue of caring for Lucas, but mainly to the emotional turbulence of that new life. "I'm well," she replied sincerely. Different but well. Different was indeed the right word. In just 1 month, her life had taken a complete turn, from the small apartment on the outskirts to the luxurious penthouse. From constant worries about overdue bills to the financial security that Gus's generosity provided. From the solitude shared only with Tiana to a routine of 4 people who day after day learned to function as a family. "Tiana got her practice SAT-ACT results yesterday," she commented. "She was among the top 10 students in the prep course." Gus's face lit up with genuine pride. "That's fantastic. We need to celebrate. How about a special dinner tonight? I can make a reservation at Le Bernardin, or if you prefer something more casual." "Actually," Rosalie interrupted with a smile, "Tiana said she just wants a pizza and movie night with all of us." Something in that simplicity touched Gus deeply. He who had spent years measuring success in numbers, achievements and material possessions, now found genuine happiness in moments like that. A family gathered around pizza and a movie, celebrating small daily victories. "Pizza and movies it is then," he agreed, putting his arm around Rosalie's waist as they walked to the living room. There, they found Tiana and Lucas bent over a large sheet of paper, drawing what appeared to be a hospital. "And this will be the waiting room," Lucas explained, pointing with the pencil. "It has to have cool magazines and a place for kids to draw while they wait." "Good idea," Tiana agreed. "And we could have a space just for teenagers too, with computers for studying." Gus and Rosalie exchanged intrigued glances. "What are you two planning there?" Gus asked, approaching to get a better look at the drawing. "Tiana's clinic," Lucas replied as if it were obvious. "When she's a doctor, she's going to open a clinic for people who can't afford it, and I'm going to draw comic books for the children who are her patients." Tiana blushed slightly. "It's just a silly dream. Lucas wanted to draw what it would be like." "It's not silly," Gus countered seriously. "It's a noble dream. And you know what? I think it could become a reality." "How so?" Tiana asked, now genuinely curious. "Well, my company has a foundation that funds social projects. Have you thought about what a community clinic in an underserved neighborhood would be like? With volunteer doctors, affordable prices for those who can pay a little, and free care for those who can't." Tiana's eyes sparkled. "That would be amazing, but it would cost a lot of money. Money is just a tool. Tiana, what matters is the purpose behind it," Gus replied, surprising himself with that philosophy that, until recently, would have sounded absurd to the ruthless executive he had been. Rosalie watched the scene with a mixture of emotion and caution. Seeing Gus encourage her daughter's dreams was touching, but she feared they were building castles in the air. "It's a project for the future," she intervened diplomatically. "First, Tiana needs to pass her entrance exams. Graduate, there are many years ahead." "Precisely," Gus agreed. "Enough time for us to plan everything carefully. Who knows, by the time you're in your third year of college, we might already be starting the implementation. The plot of land I own in the East Side borough would be perfect." Everyone's excitement was contagious. Soon all four were bent over the drawing, adding details, discussing possibilities, dreaming together of a shared future. To an outside observer, they would seem like an ordinary family planning an ambitious project, not a billionaire executive. His nanny, his son, and her daughter. That night, as agreed, they spread out in the spacious living room for the impromptu movie night. Lucas, with his casted leg propped on pillows, occupied the center of the larger sofa. Gus and Rosalie sat on either side of him, while Tiana settled into the adjacent armchair. Pizza boxes, sodas, and a huge bowl of popcorn completed the scene. "What movie are we watching?" Gus asked, putting his arm around Lucas's shoulder. "Up," the boy replied promptly. "It's the story of a grumpy old man who learns to have a family again." The adults exchanged amused glances at the very appropriate choice. As the colorful story unfolded on screen, Rosalie couldn't help but notice the similarities between Carl Fredrickssen's emotional journey and Gus's transformation in recent weeks. At one point, when the character Ellie said that adventure is out there, Rosalie felt Gus's hand discreetly find hers behind Lucas's back. Their fingers intertwined in a silent gesture laden with promises. 3 days later, Patricia finally returned to the United States. Her visit to the apartment was brief and tense. She entered like a whirlwind, laden with gifts for Lucas and incisive questions about his recovery. When she noticed the dynamic established between her son and Rosalie, the naturalness with which he asked her for help, the confidence with which he followed her instructions for exercises, her face visibly hardened. "We need to talk," she said to Gus, pulling him into the office. Rosalie and Tiana remained in the living room with Lucas, pretending not to hear the raised voices escaping through the slightly ajar door. Phrases like, "What kind of arrangement is this, and you can't just replace," reached their ears. Rosalie remained calm, distracting Lucas with a board game, but inside her heart pounded. After almost an hour, the office door opened. Patricia emerged first, visibly distraught, followed by Gus, whose expression was a mixture of determination and relief. "Lucas, dear, Mommy has to go now," Patricia announced, approaching to hug her son. "But I'll be back on the weekend to pick you up. We'll spend Sunday together, just the two of us, okay?" The boy nodded, returning the hug with less enthusiasm than he had shown when receiving the presents. Patricia cast one last evaluating look at Rosalie before leaving a palpable tension in the air. That night, after Lucas and Tiana were asleep, Gus found Rosalie on the penthouse balcony, contemplating the city lights. She accepted, he simply said. positioning himself beside her at the railing. Not without resistance, but she accepted. Accepted what exactly? Rosalie asked, though she already guessed the answer. That you stay, that this new configuration can continue. I explained to her how happy Lucas is, how everything has changed for the better. How the four of us what? Rosalie prompted when he hesitated. How the four of us became a family, Gus completed, turning to face her. Not a conventional family, but a family nonetheless. And how I don't want to give that up. Rosalie felt her heart race. And she agreed? She understood that it's what's best for Lucas, and that I'm committed to this, to you all. The silence that followed was filled only by the distant sounds of the city and their increasingly synchronized breathing. I'm scared, Rosalie finally confessed. Scared that this is just a moment, a phase, that one day you'll wake up and realize we're from two different worlds, that Tiana and I don't belong in this life. Gus took her hands in his as he had at the hospital. I'm scared too, scared of not being the man you and Tiana deserve, scared that Lucas will get even more attached and then suffer if something goes wrong, scared of failing as I failed in my marriage. Then why risk it? She asked almost in a whisper. Because for the first time in years I feel like I'm truly living. Not just existing, accumulating money, power and things, but living, feeling, caring. A silent tear rolled down Rosalie's face. Gus gently wiped it away with his thumb. I don't have all the answers, he continued. I don't know exactly how we're going to make this work long term. But I know I want to try, with you. With Tiana, with Lucas, one day at a time. Slowly, as if asking permission, he leaned in and touched her lips with his, a soft, almost reverent kiss, sealing an unverbalized pact between them. When they pulled apart, Rosalie smiled through her tears. One day at a time, she agreed. In the weeks that followed, they established a routine that surprisingly worked well. Lucas spent Sundays with Patricia, who gradually seemed to accept the new reality. Gus permanently reduced his hours at the office, delegating more responsibilities and prioritizing his presence at home. Tiana flourished with access to quality educational resources, dedicating herself entirely to her studies. And Rosalie, against all odds, allowed herself to dream. Not just about her daughter's future, but about her own. She enrolled in a nursing technical course, a desire dormant for years due to lack of time and resources. Gus supported her unconditionally, adapting the household schedule to accommodate her evening classes. One afternoon, while helping Lucas with physical therapy, the boy asked a question that caught her by surprise. Rosalie, are you and my dad going to get married? She almost dropped the pillow she was holding. Why do you ask that, dear? Because you look at each other like people who are in love in movies, and because it would be cool if you were my real stepmom. The childlike sincerity completely disarmed her. Things between adults are a little more complicated, Lucas. Your dad and I are getting to know each other better, but you like him, right? The same way he likes you? Rosalie smiled, unable to lie. Yes, I like him. A lot. The smile that lit up Lucas's face was worth more than 1,000 words. Without realizing it, she had given the boy something he deeply desired, the hope of a reconstituted family, where love would replace the void left by his parents' divorce. That night, as they all had dinner together, a habit that had become sacred, Gus made an announcement. I have a surprise for you all. I've booked a beach house for the next holiday. Lucas will already be in his orthopedic boot. He'll be able to move around better. What do you think? Which beach? Tiana asked, excited. The Hamptons. It's a big house with a pool. Belongs to a friend who lent it to me. I thought we deserved a break after everything we've been through. The idea of a family trip, and that's how they thought of themselves now, as a family, filled everyone with anticipation. They immediately began planning activities, listing what they would bring, discussing logistics considering Lucas's mobility limitations. Later, when the children had already gone to bed, Gus found Rosalie in the bedroom, organizing some clothes. I had another idea, he said, gently closing the door behind him, but this one is just for you. He sat on the edge of the bed, inviting her to join him. When she did, he took a small box from his pocket. It's not a formal proposal, he quickly explained, seeing the alarm on her face. Not yet. I know we need more time, that there's a lot to consider. He opened the box, revealing not a ring, but a delicate gold chain with a heart-shaped pendant. "It's a promise," he continued, "that no matter what happens, what we've built here is real, and that I'm committed to making it work in the right time for all of us." Rosalie touched the pendant with her fingertips, emotional. "It's beautiful, just like what happened to us. Unexpected, unplanned, but undeniably beautiful." As Gus placed the chain around her neck, Rosalie reflected on the improbable journey that had brought them there. From that first morning at the office, with Lucas bored and Gus distant, to that moment of genuine intimacy, mutual trust, and nascent love. It wasn't a traditional fairy tale. There was no prince rescuing a damsel, no magical transformations, no instant solutions. It was a real story, with real fears, real challenges, and imperfect people trying day after day to build something meaningful from the chance encounter that had united them. And perhaps it was precisely this imperfection, this shared humanity, that made what they had so precious. Because in the end, it wasn't about different worlds meeting, but about people discovering that, in what truly matters, we are not so different after all. 2 years passed since the accident at Bear Mountain State Park. Lucas, now 10 years old, ran through the apartment corridors without any trace of the fracture that had immobilized him. His talent for drawing had blossomed, and his comic strips were published in the school newspaper. "Tiana, look what arrived," he shouted, bursting into his sister's room with an envelope in his hands. Tiana, at 19, looked up from the thick anatomy book. Her first year of medical school at Columbia University was challenging, but her determination had only grown. "It's from Dad's foundation. I think it's about the clinic," Lucas explained, handing her the envelope. Inside, an official document stated that the Hope Community Clinic project had been approved by the Board of Directors of the Miller Foundation, with construction scheduled to begin next semester. "I can't believe it," Tiana exclaimed. "We have to tell Mom." They found Rosalie in the kitchen. At 40, she exuded a serene beauty. The nanny uniform had long been replaced by clothes that reflected her personality. Around her neck, the heart-shaped pendant Gus had given her remained as a symbol of a promise kept. "Mom, the clinic project has been approved," Tiana announced, showing her the letter. "This deserves a special celebration," Rosalie declared. "I'll prepare that seafood stew you all love." In the past 2 years, Rosalie had completed her nursing technical course and started a bachelor's degree. Her knowledge would be fundamental for the community clinic they planned. Gus's transformation had also been remarkable. The results-obsessed executive had gradually made way for a man who found purpose in social projects and family moments. That evening, when Gus arrived with 2 bottles of wine, he was greeted by a celebratory family. "To the Hope Project," he toasted, "and to the extraordinary family that made it possible." As they savored the seafood stew, they planned the next steps, the groundbreaking ceremony, the selection of the first volunteers, the purchase of equipment. "We need to define the initial services," Gus commented. "General practice, pediatrics, and gynecology." "And a basic lab," Tiana added. "For simple tests." "We could have a reading room with comic books for the children," Lucas suggested. Later, when the children had gone to bed, Gus and Rosalie sat on the balcony, as they did almost every night. "Remember the first time we were here?" Gus asked. "When you feared you didn't belong in this world." "It feels like an eternity ago," Rosalie replied. "You were the ruthless executive who barely had time for his son, and I was the nanny scared by the luxury. And look at us now," he completed, "the family building a clinic together." "I think we've finally found our place," she murmured. "Not in your world or mine, but in our world." The next day they visited the plot of land where the clinic would be built, located on the border between Eastwood Borough and a neighboring district. The 2-acre space would be transformed into a community health center. "This will be the reception," Tiana explained, walking with architectural plans in hand. "And back there, the consulting rooms." Lucas followed his sister, placing small, colorful signs he had prepared. "Pediatrics, waiting room, pharmacy." Soon, curious neighbors approached. Rosalie, Tiana, and Lucas explained the project, answered questions, listened to suggestions. Among the residents, Rosalie recognized Mrs. Zelda, her old neighbor. "Rosalie?" "Is that really you, dear?" the old woman exclaimed. "And this elegant gentleman is your husband?" she asked, pointing to Gus. "We are together, yes," Rosalie replied. "And that's my Tiana studying medicine, and the boy there is Lucas, our youngest son." The words flowed naturally, without needing explanations about the unconventional formation of that family. "God writes straight with crooked lines," Mrs. Zelda commented. "You were always special, dear." That night, Gus surprised Rosalie with a proposal. "What if we got married before the clinic's inauguration? A simple ceremony in the community. Something that also symbolizes our commitment to the project." "That would be perfect," she replied, kissing him. In the following months, the construction progressed rapidly. Gus got personally involved, using his influence to accelerate bureaucratic processes. Tiana accompanied every step, learning about hospital management. Lucas created educational comic books about health, and Rosalie coordinated the team responsible for patient reception. In parallel, they discreetly prepared the wedding ceremony. 1 week before the official inauguration of the clinic, they gathered in the small local community chapel. "Why are you crying?" Lucas asked Tiana. "Because I'm happy," she explained. "Happy to see our family officially united and for our project to be about to start functioning." The ceremony was brief and emotional. The vows spoke not only of romantic love, but of partnership and shared commitment to greater causes. "When I met you, Rosalie, I was lost in a world of numbers," Gus declared. "You taught me that success is not measured in figures, but in transformed lives." "And you showed me that dreams can come true," she replied. "That family is not defined by conventions, but by a daily choice to love." Leaving the chapel, they were surprised by dozens of community residents forming an aisle, applauding and throwing petals. Mrs. Zelda approached with a bouquet of wildflowers. "The community wanted to thank you, not just for the clinic, but for showing that it's possible to unite different worlds for a common cause." That night, at the small party in the community hall, Rosalie watched her family interact naturally among her childhood neighbors, Gus's colleagues, Tiana's friends, and Lucas's schoolmates. It was as if different worlds finally merged into one, a space where differences did not separate, but enriched. "What are you thinking about?" Gus asked, offering her champagne. "How we got here," she replied. "When I walked into that office 2 years ago, I never would have imagined we'd be celebrating our wedding, about to inaugurate a clinic. They say the best encounters are those that destiny arranges when we're busy making other plans," he commented. "Do you believe in destiny?" "I believe there are people destined to transform our lives, to make us better versions of ourselves, and I'm sure you are that person for me." As they kissed, surrounded by the warmth of friends and family, they knew that this was not a happy ending, but a chapter in a story under construction, a story about the courage to start anew, about families formed by choice, and about how true love can transform entire communities when directed for the common good. The auditorium of the Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons was packed. In the front row, a family waited with emotion. Rosalie, at 45, in a turquoise dress, Gus with pride stamped in his eyes, Lucas, at 14, elegant in his first suit, and Mrs. Zelda, now in her 80s, a special guest for this historic moment. "She's the valedictorian," Lucas repeated, checking the ceremony program. Also present were young scholarship students from the Miller Foundation's educational program, including Maria Edwards, who had followed in Tiana's footsteps and was studying medicine at the same university. In recent years, the life of that improvised family had consolidated into a story of overcoming challenges. The community clinic had become a model of humanized care. Rosalie, a registered nurse, coordinated 20 professionals. Gus had divided his career between his company and philanthropy. Lucas had developed an art therapy program for children in treatment, and Tiana, who once studied by candlelight, was graduating with honors after 6 years of dedication. The auditorium lights dimmed. One by one, the professors entered in procession, followed by the dean and director. After the national anthem and institutional speeches, it was time for the graduates' entrance. When the name Tiana Collins Miller was announced, Rosalie couldn't hold back her tears. There was her daughter, the girl who had grown up in adverse conditions, representing not only her personal achievement, but the victory of a community. Tiana Collins Miller, approved with distinction and honor for her work on accessible models of community care in socially vulnerable regions, announced the Master of Ceremonies. As she stepped onto the stage, Tiana looked for her family. Her eyes met Rosalie's, and a silent dialogue of love and gratitude passed between them. Soon came the moment for the valedictorian's speech. Tiana adjusted the microphone and took a deep breath. "Good morning, everyone. It is with honor that I represent my colleagues in this significant moment," she began. "Today we celebrate not only the completion of a course, but the consolidation of a commitment to the life and well-being of those who will entrust their vulnerable moments into our hands." Her voice took on a personal note. "My journey began in a small house where my mother, a tireless worker, planted the seed of a seemingly unattainable dream. I studied by candlelight with borrowed books amidst scarcity." Looking at Rosalie, she continued, "In this improbable scenario, I learned the most valuable lessons. That healing begins with empathy, that dignity is a right, not a privilege, that every person deserves to be seen with respect." Turning to Gus and Lucas, she proceeded, "My life changed when destiny placed people in our path who transformed the impossible into possible, who taught us that family goes beyond blood ties. It is made of daily choices, of hearts that open." With a choked voice she shared, 5 years ago, I participated in the founding of a clinic that serves the population from where I came. I saw how access to health transforms entire communities. I saw children like me gaining a concrete example that dreams are possible." She concluded with conviction, "The medicine we practice will never be just technical, but an act of human connection, of courage that trembles but acts, of generosity that offers time, not scraps. Let us be doctors who heal not only with science, but with humanity in our hearts." The auditorium erupted in applause. Lucas whistled, while Gus and Rosalie, hand in hand, cried with pride. After the ceremony, when Tiana finally reached her family, there was no need for words. The collective hug said it all. "I'm so proud of you," Rosalie whispered. "I couldn't have done it without you all," Tiana replied. Gus cleared his throat, controlling his emotion. "We have a surprise." They led her out of the auditorium, where patients from the Hope Community Clinic waited with congratulatory posters and flowers. "Dr. Tiana," they shouted in unison. The young doctor hugged each of them, recognizing them by name, asking about their conditions. For those people, she represented the hope that dreams are possible regardless of origin. Lucas handed her a formal envelope from the Miller Foundation. Inside, a document informed the approval of the clinic's expansion, with the creation of a medical specialties center that would be named Dr. Tiana Collins Center. "And there's more," Gus added. 10 full scholarships for students from the community who want to pursue careers in healthcare. The program will be called Future Hope, and you will be the mentor. That night they celebrated with a special dinner in the apartment. When everyone had already gone to bed, Rosalie found Tiana on the balcony. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, placing a shawl over her daughter's shoulders. "How we got here," Tiana replied. "Remember when you went to work for an executive with a small child?" Rosalie smiled. "I remember you warning me it was just a temporary job. And look what happened," Tiana continued. "We found a family, we achieved impossible dreams. What makes me happiest is seeing that you kept your commitment to those who didn't have the same opportunities," Rosalie commented. "That's thanks to you and Dad," Tiana replied. "You showed us that privilege brings responsibility. That bridges between different worlds are necessary." "Tomorrow I start as a resident physician," Tiana commented. "I'll work part-time at our clinic, treating the people I saw suffer during my childhood." "It all comes full circle," Rosalie observed. "No," Tiana corrected. "It's just the beginning of a new cycle." The next morning, the family gathered for breakfast before Tiana left for her first day as a doctor. The goodbyes were brief but emotional. When the elevator took Tiana to the start of her journey, Rosalie, Gus, and Lucas remained for a moment holding hands, symbolizing everything they had built together. "What are we going to do today?" Lucas asked. "I have a meeting about the clinic's expansion," Gus replied. "You two could come. Afterward, we'll have lunch at that restaurant you like. And tonight, we'll prepare something for Tiana. Maybe that chocolate cake," Rosalie suggested, "with extra frosting," Lucas completed. And so, with simple plans for an ordinary day, the family moved forward, no longer as people from different worlds united by extraordinary circumstances, but as a unit forged by daily choices of love and shared purpose. Because family is built in the small everyday choices, in the decision to be present, in the courage to offer and accept help, in the generosity that transforms resources into opportunities, in the respect for differences that enrich instead of separating. And when we reach out to help someone, we often discover that we are being saved by those we thought we were saving. Because true love, when shared, never diminishes, it only multiplies. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Rosalie, Gus, Tiana, and Lucas has touched your hearts. To follow this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking on the icon to the left. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the beauty of transformative encounters. Until next time.